Yo, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Adamoose, and today in this series called In Depth, I'm going to be breaking down everything that you need to know about Poppy Jungle.
Swinging from the heels.
Poppy is a simple champion, but can be very powerful in the right hands. She's recently been picked up by the top junglers in the world, and in my opinion is an extremely underrated pick in the current meta. If you enjoy the content, it really helps me out if you could leave a like and comment on the video to help your boy out with the YouTube algorithm. If you want to talk with me and other members in the community that are looking to improve, be sure to join the Discord link that's in the description. Hope you guys can learn something. Enjoy the video. Abilities. To start off, let's jump right into Poppy's abilities and how to effectively use her kit. Poppy's passive is called Iron Ambassador. Periodically, Poppy throws her buckler as her next basic attack, gaining 350 bonus range and dealing bonus magic damage. The shield then lands on the ground after 1 second, where it remains for 4 seconds. When Poppy picks up the buckler, she shields herself for a percentage of her maximum health for 3 seconds. Enemy champions can also step on this to destroy it, making it a small mini game between you and your opponent to get the extra shielding. If your buckler toss kills its target, it automatically bounces back to Poppy. This is a pretty straightforward passive that provides Poppy with some extra shielding and an occasional range auto attack, which can be pretty clutch in the right situations. Poppy's Q is called Hammer Shock. Poppy smashes the ground in the target direction, dealing physical damage to all enemies struck within. The impacted ground then becomes unstable, slowing enemies before erupting after 1 second, dealing the same amount of physical damage to enemies caught inside. This is by far Poppy's main source of consistent damage in fights and while clearing the jungle. Although very simple, using your Q in the right direction against moving targets can be the difference between getting 1 Hammer Shock proc or 2. You can also Q Flash, since Hammer Shock will be cast from wherever Poppy is at the end of the cast time, giving your enemies much less time to dodge the spell. Poppy's W is called Steadfast Presence. Passively, Poppy's total armor and magic resist are both increased by 10%, doubled to 20% when she falls below 40% health. When activated, Poppy gains 40% bonus move speed for 2 seconds and generates an aura around herself for the duration, causing all enemies who attempt to dash within it to be knocked up and dealt magic damage. If they were successfully interrupted, they're then grounded and slowed for 25% for 2 seconds. This is Poppy's signature spell, which is honestly one of the biggest hard counters to many champions in the game. Champions like Lee Sin, Jarvan, and Nidalee can be completely stopped from using their highly mobile kits by simply holding this spell. Although it seems very simple, using this at the right moments is going to be the biggest difference maker between a good and bad Poppy player. Poppy's E is called Heroic Charge. Poppy dashes to the target enemy's location, and if they're in range upon arrival, this deals physical damage and carries them with her. If the target then collides with terrain, she then deals another round of physical damage and stuns them for a duration that increases with every skill point. This is Poppy's main CC tool, gap closer, and also playmaking tool if you know how to use it properly. Enemies can blink or flash the spell to avoid the damage and avoid getting carried. Obviously, slamming targets into walls is going to be the go-to, but this spell can be used in many different ways. You can gap close onto minions or monsters, dash to enemies over walls, or even use minions as an escape path. Lastly, you can even use this to flank enemies and push them into your team to start off fights against vulnerable carries that are out of position. Poppy's ultimate is called Keeper's Verdict. Poppy charges up while slowing herself for up to 4 seconds to increase Keeper's Verdict's range and knockback distance. This can be recast at any time during its duration. When recast, Poppy releases the charge with a short cast time, launching her hammer, which deals physical damage to all enemies around her, and knocking them up. If Poppy charged for at least half a second, she smashes the ground, dealing increased damage and knocking enemies a massive distance towards their fountain. If no enemies are within the hitbox, the slam creates a shockwave instead that travels in the target direction until it collides with an enemy champion. If Poppy is interrupted during a charge, or the charge completes without reactivation, Keeper's Verdict is cancelled and the ability is put on a much shorter cooldown, which can be a good tool to bait out flashes or dashes while saving the huge CD. This is a very unique spell that can be a complete game changer if used correctly. There are two main use cases: a no-charge ult for a quick knockup, or a fully charged ult to completely disengage enemies from a fight. Although Poppy's R does not deal that much damage, it brings massive utility by being able to punt out multiple enemies from a teamfight, giving your team the numbers advantage. For ability maxing Q first, E second, and W third is the standard skill order and is the optimal setup for most games. Runes. Now that we've broken down Poppy's kit, let's discuss her best rune choices for the current season in the jungle. First off, and most common, is the Domination tree with either Dark Harvest or Predator. Dark Harvest is the most popular choice by most Poppy players since it provides some very nice scaling and burst for her all-in combos. Predator is a pretty underrated choice in my opinion that is mainly used in high elo to allow for some extra mobility and playmaking, which Poppy kind of lacks. For the rest of runes, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, and Relentless Hunter are going to be your standard choices. If you're running Predator, Ingenious Hunter can be a great option to reduce your item CDs, which can be really helpful in snowballing out of control. For secondaries, Sorcery is by far the best choice. Celerity and Water Walking really help to increase mobility and close the distance against targets, since Poppy does lack mobility compared to other champions. Now, after doing some research on the pro Poppy players, I've been seeing a ton of Phase Rush being run recently. This is a page that is less common right now, but is honestly extremely powerful once you get used to it. The mobility from the Sorcery page plus Hex Flash from the Inspiration tree really allows for some creative plays once you have some practice on it. For rune shards, double Adaptive Force or attack speed and Adaptive Force is going to be the standard, with either armor or magic resist depending on your jungle matchup and enemy team comp. Items. Now let's discuss the top item builds for Poppy jungle. To start, both Red Smite and Blue Smite are viable options depending on the enemy team comp. Red Smite is the best choice if you need extra dueling power, while Blue Smite allows you to chase down mobile carries much more easily. For boots, Poppy either wants to run plated steel caps into heavy AD auto attack based teams, or Merc Treads against lots of crowd control. If you don't need either defensive stat, Ionian Boots of Lucidity can be another strong option for more utility. Now for mythics, Divine Sunder is by far the most common choice. Building this item alone gives Poppy some massive burst damage, which fits her kit perfectly. If you want a more tanky and utility setup, Frostfire Gauntlet is another good choice to engage in slow enemies to create space for your backline. If you're looking for a more DPS setup, Triforce can also work, although it's definitely not as consistent as Sunderer. For core items, Deadman's Plate, Abyssal Mask, Thornmail, and Randuin's Omen are going to be your main options. Deadman's is amazing mainly for the extra move speed, Abyssal Mask for MR and damage, Thornmail for armor and healing reduction, and Randuin's Omen to shut down heavy crit damage teams. To close out your build, you're looking to pick up as many defensive stats and utility as possible to make sure that you can be a solid frontline for your team while also pressuring the enemy backline. Picking up some damage here and there can also be very strong if you get ahead, since Poppy deals a surprising amount of damage. Learning the best build for the current game is a skill in itself, and will greatly increase the success you have on the champ. Jungle clears. Now let's talk about Poppy's general jungle pathing and strategy. Clearing efficiently on Poppy is pretty straightforward. The main thing to keep in mind is using both procs of your Q at all times, and to avoid cancelling your autos by spamming your CDs too fast. When clearing AoE camps such as raptors, wolves, and krugs, remember to focus your auto attack and E damage onto the big monsters. I see too many low elo Poppies wasting auto attacks on the small raptors or krugs who would die to your AoE Q damage regardless. You can even use your Q to clear your blue and Gromp at once, since your main damage spell is AoE. Although Poppy is not a mechanically hard champion, she does have some cool mechanics that can be used when ganking and fighting skirmishes. The first is using your E in creative ways besides just slamming enemies into walls. If you know an enemy has no flash, wrapping behind an enemy and E-ing them towards your team can do the trick just right. Just remember to activate your W so they can't dash out. Another important one is using your E in flash to reposition yourself quickly and get into range to deny enemies dashing away. Imagine you're ganking bot lane and the enemy ADC is a Tristana. Since they will most likely start jumping away right when they see you, you can use minions to dash in with E, then flash in W range to block the jump and root the enemy. Being decisive is extremely important in these situations. This also goes for using ult when ganking. Be careful not to hold your R for too long, unless you're planning on launching your enemies straight to safety towards their nexus. Lastly is that you can use your passive auto on jungle plants to instantly proc your shield before going into combat. This is not a huge deal, but is something to make use of when possible. For jungle clears, Poppy is pretty straightforward, but there are a couple of variations based on your goal in each game. First and most common is the standard 5 camp clear into Scuttle. This can be done leashless, starting on wolves or raptors, or with a leash, starting on either buff. You then clear 4 other camps on the way to your desired Scuttle to reach level 4 and begin making plays happen. The main takeaway from this is that Poppy is not the strongest early game duelist and can be punished, so starting leashless is a way to hide your starting position from your enemy. If you're not worried about being invaded, feel free to start with a leash. Next is the 3 camp gank or invade path, which is the most aggressive approach. This usually involves clearing both buffs and gromp, then ganking or invading. You can also do this by clearing one side of your jungle, then ganking mid on the way. I mentioned this path since it's very viable. Just keep in mind that Poppy is not the strongest ganking jungler in the world, so make sure this gank has a high chance of working out before going for it. Lastly is the 3 camp clear into recall to buy predator boots. Obviously, this is only done when running the predator rune, but this path is something I've watched multiple top tier worlds player go for to greatly increase your early game ganking potential. Ideally, you want to start leashless so the enemy jungler does not feel comfortable invading you on either side of the map. To pull this off correctly, you want to clear 3 camps, recall, then buy predator boots, run to your next buff on the other side of the map, and contest scuttle or gank while having those augmented boots. I can guarantee you that this will really catch people off guard, especially since it's so early on in the game. Weaknesses. Poppy's biggest weakness is that she's not very mobile and relies on mobility runes and items to make up for this. Don't get me wrong, she does make up for it quite well with her build setups, but she still heavily struggles into very mobile team comps. The worst feeling is playing Poppy into champions like Ezreal and Azir, who can hit you from a mile away and still easily escape from you even if you do close the distance. Poppy does also struggle into very powerful dueling bruisers such as Olaf, Volibear, and Trundle. Since these champions don't have any dashes and win 1v1 brawls against you, your only real counterplay is to either run away or to outnumber them with teammates. Finally, Poppy is a bit one-dimensional and can be predictable if not played correctly. Poppy's kit is pretty simple, so playing against a bad Poppy player can feel like a free win since you can expect everything that she's going to do. A good Poppy player will know how to play around this and take fights from creative angles and flanks to catch enemies off guard. Strengths. Now let's discuss what makes Poppy such a strong pick in the current jungle meta. First off is how powerful her W is. This spell on its own is such a hard counter for so many champions, especially with how mobile champions are in League nowadays. This is core to Poppy's identity, and having Poppy as a champion in your pool can give you some super free wins if the enemy team picks a full dash comp. Next is that she's very easy to pick up and is really strong in literally all elos. Just because she's simple doesn't mean she's not powerful. To build onto this, Poppy is always a useful champion to have on your team, especially in team fights. She has a ton of utility, and her ultimate is a tool that can be used to punt out multiple members to give your team the numbers advantage in crucial team fights. Poppy also has a very solid clear speed and extremely high base damage. This is a great benefit since she clears fast and is strong in duels while also building mostly tank. Speaking of which, Poppy has an extremely flexible build and has many different options to fit every individual game. Having tons of rune and item options is a huge benefit that is really put to use by the expert Poppy players to maximize their gold efficiency in every game. Poppy is a simple yet extremely effective bruiser that has been in the meta for years. She provides your team with a frontline, tons of utility, engage and disengage depending on what you need in each individual game. If you're looking for a champion to add to your pool who completely counters the meta and is a threat in all elos, Poppy is definitely the pick for you. That will do it for my in-depth guide on Poppy Jungle. If you want to support my content, make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to keep up with my weekly uploads. Most people who watch are not subbed, and any extra support really helps grow the channel. If you have any questions or opinions, be sure to leave them in the comments below. I'll be giving away free coaching sessions every month to members of the Discord, so be sure to click the link in the description if you're interested. With all that being said, thanks again for watching. Until the next video, peace out.